Welcome, everyone, to the Infertility Feelings podcast with me, Doug Brown. Jesse is off today because this is an all-man version of the Infertility Feelings podcast, and I am super happy to have my good friend Matt Barnes here today.
Hi.
Matt and I both have experienced infertility in different ways. You get to hear his story, which is an amazing story. Quite remarkable in so many ways.
Oh, I didn't know we were talking about that. That feels very private. And no, yeah, for sure.
And we're so grateful for him to be here and to open up and for us to kind of crack open the topic of what does it feel like to be a man while going through infertility and all the nitty gritty details of the things that happen. Matt, why don't you just go ahead and tell us a little bit about who you are?
Oh, man. I'm Matt Barnes.
All right, thanks, Matt. Let's move on to the...
I told Doug I'm in a very ADD space today, so sorry about that. I mean, professionally, I guess, I run Rogue Creative Development. We work with you guys and do a lot of production and marketing and things. And then I also have a helicopter flight school, which is
super normal. Most people have helicopter flight schools. How did you get into flying helicopters?
Did
you wake up on a Tuesday and go, you know what? I want to fly.
I'll be totally honest with you. I had a year where I was like, I'm going to learn guitar this year. And so then I took guitar lessons, and I was like, as I was doing that, I'm like, what am I going to learn next year? And I ran into this guy who was like a flight instructor. He's like, you should learn to fly helicopters. And I was like, next year I'm going to learn to fly helicopters.
From a G chord to a helicopter.
And somehow it actually happened. I wasn't even serious to myself when I said it, and then it happened. So
it's amazing. I have personally flown in a helicopter with you.
Yes, that's right.
I'm not great with heights, but you were a very skilled pilot.
Oh, well, thank you. I try my best. I do.
So what else? Tell us more about you.
Outside of that, I have a brood of children.
Yes.
My wife, Stacy, and I dated for quite a long time, which is a whole other story.
It's a whole other podcast.
That's a whole other podcast. And got married. It'll be 5 years in January. And in that 5 years, we have 4 children.
Yeah, that's amazing.
2 sets of twins. Boy, girl, and the oldest set is just turned 3 last month, and the youngest set is 17 months behind them, so they're a little over a year and a half now.
That is amazing. So, like we talk about on this podcast often, and even in our program and what we do, infertility can be a life-changing experience. You go into it wanting to have children, and if you do have children through infertility, that's a life change right there, because having children is life changing.
Yeah.
If you are, become into this situation where you're childless, not by choice, that's life changing. You also could go into a situation where you have multiples, or you have multiples of multiples, and your life changes. So clearly, infertility can be life changing, and you are, in a lot of ways, a testimony to that. But before we even get to that, I want to ask you a question, because we both grew up. You grew up here in Southern California, right?
Yep, Orange County.
Yeah, Orange County, born and raised. So we grew up here, similar context.
Yeah.
Similar, world that we lived in. I never, growing up, and I'm not talking about little kid. I'm talking, teenager, 20-year-old. I never thought about struggling to have a family. It was a given,
Even as a kid. I mean, even as a little kid, like, it was just like, you thought, this is how life goes.
Right.
You go to school, and you go to high school, you go to college, you get married, you have kids. That's how it goes.
Right.
Like, I never questioned that. None of it went that way. I mean, the high school and college part did, but nothing else went that way.
Yeah, and I think that's fascinating to me, because it was not, I didn't think of having children like a variable that could or could not happen.
Sure.
I just viewed it as like, when did I want it to happen? Well, I want to wait a few years so that we can, do the married thing first. And then it was more about how many, how far. Did you ever think about this? Like, how far you wanted them
to be apart?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
The age gap.
Oh yeah.
That was more what I thought about than actually struggling. Was that similar to you?
Yeah, never, not until we got married. I didn't consider it until we got married. And we had waited so long to get married. You know, I got married at 37, I think. And Stacy was 38 and cougar. And and you know, so at that point when you wait that long, you sort of get to that point in life where you're like, all right, none of those things that I thought were going to go the way that I thought they were going to go are going the way that I thought they were going to go. So I'm much more not, I don't know. I'm much less shocked when things come up than I think if I had been in my 20s or even early 30s. But yeah, I mean, until then, so we had a secret wedding.
Right. Which again, everyone that's super common.
That's what you do. Well, we got engaged right before Christmas.
Right.
And then decided, we're like, well, do we do like small like destination wedding? So, you know, but then not everybody can be there, or do we do big local wedding? And we were like, let's do both. So 3 weeks after we got engaged, we went to Vegas with just our wedding party and families.
That's so fun.
Got married there. And then and then in April we had our regular big wedding, and kind of as a joke, I mean, we were like, let's see if we can keep it a secret. We had no intention. We really thought it was going to get out, and we didn't care. We really didn't. But somehow it stayed a secret.
That's amazing.
And so then we thought, well, here's what we'll do. We'll get pregnant in between wedding 1 and wedding 2, and at
real shocker.
And at wedding 2, it'll be like, guess what? We're already married, and by the way, baby's coming too. And that did not happen. And so that was my first thought of, I wonder if, I mean, you know, 3 months is not a long time. So
no, it's so it's so funny that I'm tracking with you, because it's the same kind of thinking I had. Jesse and I, we were like, let's go to New York and get pregnant. That's what we thought. We were like, how fun, we'll travel to the Big Apple. And then, you know, that'll be the story. Like, well, we were married for a couple years and we went to New York and we conceived you. Like, laughable. I don't even think, like, timeline wise, it was even the right time for her to be pregnant. But it didn't matter. Didn't think about it.
Did not matter. Does not think about it. Just was like, thinking. That's gonna happen. We're gonna do this. It's gonna be so fun. We're gonna have this surprise. So at our big wedding, right before we walked down the aisle, we played the video from our Vegas wedding. To as a reveal. And people were like, what? And I mean, we had dated so long that most people just did not care. They're just like, yeah, you guys do whatever, you know? But then the idea was like, okay, we'll do that. And then we'll have the ceremony. And then at the reception, we'll be like, oh, by the way, one more thing, and have another video that announces. And obviously that did not happen. So, you know, but like you said, never really crossed my mind that I mean, and how naive. The more, you know, if you've struggled with infertility at all, which we both have, if you've or have any medical background or knowledge, I mean, it is an insane miracle that anyone gets pregnant. When you start going into all the things that have to fall into place, the dominoes that have to hit, and literally it feels like dominoes that have to hit that one's over here and they're not even near each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
is like some serious miraculous stuff going on.
Right. So for just anyone, even if fully healthy, you know, fertile people, to think, you know, oh, in 3 months we're just going to get pregnant and then be okay and announce it or whatever. Like, you go, wow, that was insane that we thought that. That alone, I'm like, people need to be re-educated, kids, whatever, of like the realities of, even if you don't have infertility issues, it's not what you think. It's not, I mean, it apparently is for 16-year-olds, but it isn't beyond, it isn't beyond that. So.
I know. I mean, this is a controversial topic, but from my perspective, I always think it's funny when, you know, teenagers or something, they're like, well, we had sex one time and we're
no, you did not.
I'm like, there's no way that happened.
Lies.
Yeah, I think that to me is, I mean, even if our listeners are primarily, even perhaps maybe a lot of women listening to this, I think that's maybe one thing to just start to notice. Even for us, it was such a shock. Yeah. For me, it was such a shock. Not a shock of like, oh, I know about this and dang it, we're experiencing it. It was like, what is this that we're experiencing? People can struggle with this. Like, it was a real shock. So
I think by that point, I mean, you know, like I said, 37, I had been around enough.
Yeah, had you guys talked about it at all?
We had talked about it a bit, but just I think had been around enough people who had struggled that I'm like aware of it at this point. If like a, you know, I'm going to call normal people, had started to try a family in my 20s, I think I would have been completely unaware. I think it would have been like, what is this thing that's happening?
Yeah, that's me. Yeah.
And I think that happens to a lot of people. I think because we watched a lot of friends get married in their 20s, try to have kids, whether successfully or not, you know, and there was a little more awareness of that, of, you know, the possibilities of miscarriage, of the possibilities of infertility, like all of that. And I also think pop culture references more and more of like, wow, you know, I mean, which is just not super helpful most of the time, but like where, you know, these references on TV sometimes of like, you're 35 and you think you're going to have a baby, you know, we had people say that. I mean, I literally had a good friend of mine who's not so much a good friend of mine anymore, but right before we got married, be like, you know, it's starting to sound really ridiculous when Stacy talks about having kids.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, oh, well, you're starting to sound like a ridiculous a-hole. So how do you like that? But, and you know, so I mean, I think there was that awareness.
Why do people feel so inclined to voice that? You know, there's so bizarre.
People feel very empowered to voice, well, their opinions on everything now, but they're especially when it comes to family and, you know, like even couples that get married that decide they don't want to have kids, and it's like all this weird pressure on them of like, well, why not? What's wrong? Like, come on, you should, you really should do this,
right?
And I don't know why people feel that freedom to do that. It's different if it's like a close friend where you're like out of concern or you're having, or out of curiosity and like, is this something you're interested in, or what led to that decision, that kind of thing. But a lot of it is very judgy. Yeah. And there was a lot of that.
I felt that too. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think so. It wasn't as much of a huge shock as much of it was like, oh, I guess I didn't think that was going to be us. I didn't think, I know that's out there. I know other people struggle with that. I didn't think it would be us. I took a very proactive approach.
Okay.
We, you know, like I said, we thought, okay, 3 months, we'll knock one out.
Crank out one kid, 3 months.
Crank, you know, whatever, so we can make the announcement. Which, like, what a terrible motivation. I mean, we really wanted to have kids too, but like, oh, so that it can be on our timeline, so we can do a cool video and reveal.
I think that's the first death blow that infertility really delivers, is the expectation of timeline.
Oh, for sure.
It's like, hey, this is what you were thinking. Let me just destroy it.
Exactly. Let me humble you there.
How long after that 3 months was it? Were you guys just trying indefinitely, kind of wondering what was going to happen? Or?
I think if I remember right, we were on our honeymoon in April, and I just said, look, let's just be realistic. We're old. We're not 20. We're not 30. We're nearing 40. There's a chance, because we've seen other people go through this, there's a chance that something could be wrong. I would rather find out now than try for a year and then find out. And then also now we have lost time. Yeah. So that was, and Stacy was kind of like, okay, you know, so we got back from our honeymoon and set up an appointment to get checked out. Yeah. And pretty quickly found, immediately found that I had a low sperm count and low motility and all that. Not like so low that it couldn't happen, but very, like, it was going to be challenging. Right.
How was that? What did that feel like?
That was a bummer. I think it, you know, I mean, again, I went into it thinking there's a high probability that at this age, blah, 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 blah. But also just the reality of like, oh, okay. I think, you know, and there's something tied to manliness and virility and all of that, and I'm not that guy. I'm not a big sports guy. I'm not, like, let's go camping or let's shoot things. I'm just never been that guy.
But you do fly a helicopter.
I do fly a helicopter. So
I don't know where that fits in.
I get a little MacGyver-y occasionally, but most of the time I'm not that guy. And so, I think some people, maybe it would have affected more or less or whatever. For me, it just was a little like I guess it feels like, and I've heard women explain this too. It feels like, hey, this is the one thing that biologically I should just be able to do.
Yeah.
And I can't do it. And that's unfortunate. And then I think on top of that, for us, because we had chosen to wait so long and gotten so much crap for that over the years. Yeah. There was a little bit of that, like, oh, maybe they were right. Maybe we made a bad choice here. I mean, relationally and life-wise, as far as we wanted to be able to experience things and grow ourselves individually and all of this before we decided to embark on that next journey. And it turned out there was a lot to work through. But
it's such a mind twister thing, though, because you find out you're struggling medically with something.
Sure.
And then all of a sudden there's all the emotional stuff that just floods in. Like, did we wait too long? Were they right? Were the haters right? Or stuff and like, now you got to deal with that on top of.
And there's not answers to those questions.
They're just what ifs.
If at 30 I might have had the same problem, I don't know.
Totally.
Did that happen?
I did. So I did.
Right.
I'm not even at 30. I mean, like 27.
Right.
So it's like, I didn't have the what ifs we waited too long. But I had other things. I had other what ifs. I had other, like, well, am I having all of these medical problems because I was, an idiot when I was in high school and surfed too much? Or when I climbed into that radio tower to go explore, did I zap my sperm? Stuff like that. That comes in.
I had, as a kid, an addiction to Mountain Dew. And do you remember the urban legend about Mountain Dew that it killed your sperm count?
Yeah.
And
I don't know if that's an urban legend.
Now I'm like, I don't know. This could be true. It's the yellow 5. It kills your sperm count, and there's yellow. I don't know. And then so like this, when you get that, when the doctor comes in and says, "Hey man," well, first of all, they don't say "Hey man." They're so just. So you have a low sperm count, so matter of fact, and you're like, wait, I'm catching up with. Wait, what now?
Yeah.
Then all these things start rushing through your head of like, is this my fault? Could I have, and I'm a pretty practical person. So I'm honestly was able to move past that pretty quickly again, because I also went in thinking there's a good chance there's gonna be a problem because we're older. Right. But there just still was that like, really? Was it something I did? Could I have? I don't know. And there's no answers to those questions. No. There's just not.
Yeah. And it feels empty to go down that road.
Yes. Because
you can't go back in time. You can't figure out what it is. All you can do is deal with the present. But that's what I think a lot of people miss is, if you develop another disease or something, there are a lot of what ifs, but it feels like there's so many variables. Like you said, it's almost like a miracle that anyone gets pregnant.
Sure.
Because all these stars have to align. And then when you find out you can't get pregnant, you're like, well, what did I do wrong, or what went wrong in all of these different variables? And now you're on this crazy train of trying to figure it out.
Yeah. And I think, so much of what I love about what you guys are doing is just allowing people to process some of this stuff and giving them tools to do that, because I don't know. I mean, for me, I was just going, fortunately, like I've done therapy. Like I kind of have some of those tools I was able to process. Stacy is great for that. Like we learned to process together really well over the years. And so we had that support. But even then it's like when you just don't have answers, and this is a thing. And the pressure of like, even my parents, like for years had been like, are you guys gonna give us grandkids? I mean, when and then when we get engaged, I mean, that my mom was excited we were getting married, but she was excited because grandkids are coming. And, and we were so I think, there's all of that in there. There's all of that in there. And then we moved. So then we moved into the processes and stuff. And then we find out that actually Stacy also had, and we didn't find this out till later, when we were doing IUI, that Stacy also, one of her tubes was blocked.
Okay.
So again, not a game stopper.
Yeah.
But now, because you never know which side the egg's going to come down on. It's not always, it doesn't always switch back and forth every month or 50-50, whatever. Right. You could have 4 months in a row of it trying to come the same side.
Right.
And if it's that side, it's not coming down. Right. Combine that with my thing, and it was like, yeah, the odds of this happening are super slim, like real slim. And I think then that happens. It's also now she's feeling these things.
Yeah.
She probably felt them more than I did, just personality wise. Mm-hmm. And then I want to support her in that.
Yeah.
But I'm also still dealing with myself in that.
Yeah.
And you also have the practical of, okay, here's what we need to do, and let's make some decisions and that. But also we need to process. Just there's a little storm going on there, and so many variables. And
I sometimes think a lot of times when you start to find out your diagnosis of infertility and you're figuring it all out, it's like you jump on this ship that's in the middle of a storm.
Sure.
And you're like, well, I gotta protect myself because I'm in this storm. I got to care for myself, make sure I'm doing well. But also I'm trying to sail this ship at the same time. So there's like a sense of self-care that needs to happen. But you are also very, for me, I don't know if it was me, I don't know, because of this is like my manness of it, or just my personality, probably more just my personality. But I was very like missional too. Like we want to go that way. So I got to worry about myself, but also I'm trying to get the thing
I've
to
got
go
this,
a certain way.
We've got this endpoint that we're aiming for, which is we want to have kids. And so
I said that so many times.
Like
we want to have kids.
We got to push in. We okay, then what's the next step? What's the next thing? And there were a few moments I think where I probably and Stacey and I've talked about this, like where I needed to even just say, hey, let's give it a day or two to just process. Because I'm literally on the drive home from the fertility clinic where we found out about her issue or whatever, going, okay, so what's the next step?
Right, yeah.
What do we do next? And she's sitting there going, I can't. My body's failing me. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, right. Yes, that. Also, kids.
It's a lot to process.
It's so much.
Absolutely, yeah. You might be listening and you remember from when we first started talking, you're thinking, this guy has 4 kids? Where do the 4 kids come in? You're nearing 40. Mm-hmm. Both of you have fertility issues. Mm-hmm. How do you get to 4?
Well, it turns out that the security at the nursery at church is really lax. So
that's dark.
That's dark. I took a dark turn there. No. So I think part of the frustration I have with the infertility journey for people is the lack of communication sometimes from the medical community on what are your options, what's the right option, I guess, or the best option for you given your circumstances.
Right, yeah.
Giving recommendations and that type of thing. There was a lot of one thing when I work with organizations that I talk about, is organizations develop their own language, right? Yeah. Like your own terminology and whatever. Yeah. And you can't always, you have to remember when outsiders come in, you can't have an assumed knowledge that they understand what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So
it's a different, you're speaking a different language.
Right. And so this, our doctor, who was fantastic, I mean, just a great doctor, and his team was great, but there was a lot of that where it was like this assumed knowledge, and he would make reference to, well, so that didn't work, so IUI didn't work, so we're going to go to this, and I think that whatever, and we're just going, I don't know what the words that are coming out of your mouth are. And by the time,
right, yeah.
And he's so matter of fact, by the time we're processing and even what he just said, he's gone. He's out the door.
Yeah.
And so I think that was, a big part of it for us was going, okay, what are these next steps? And for us, it ended up being IVF.
Yeah. I feel that same way with infertility medication. Obviously, medication always notoriously has these crazy names.
Yep.
And, you get assigned all of these things to take, and you're like almost speaking Latin at some point. And it's like, what am I doing?
Not only that, but now, and you're giving me flashbacks here. So when you're doing even IUI or you're doing IVF or whatever, I mean, there's shots and there's pills and there's this and there's that. And, you're doing this yourself. It's one thing to take a pill by yourself. We've all been trained in how to do that, take an Advil, take or whatever. But I'd never given anybody a shot before.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I loved it, but I was crazy nervous. It was one of the things I love most about IVF was doing the shot. I loved it.
Really?
Yeah, but I mean, there's other people that probably hated it.
I didn't hate it. I think for me at first there was the nervousness of like they tell you, okay, you do, and I'm like, I am by personality a rule follower when it makes sense to be a rule follower. If I look at rules and I go, these rules are dumb, I'm fine to break them. But
that's what you want from a helicopter pilot, by the way.
But that's actually the perfect example. I look at that, and if there are things I don't understand or I've studied and learned, and I go, no, these rules are here for a reason.
Yeah.
You follow the freaking rules, right?
Right.
Medicine, I'm not an expert, so I'm going to be a rule follower because I don't know. I don't want to screw things up, right? And this in particular, like, this is whether we end up with children or not.
Yeah.
Also, if I stick the needle in the wrong spot, am I going to hurt my wife?
Totally.
Am I going to kill my wife? I don't know. I do not want a homicide on my record. So I think, all of that is there's just so much there. And sometimes, like, I mean, fortunately, like there were some great support staff there where we'd call, and I'm like, I'm about to give her first shot. Is it an inch here? Or is it? And they're like, calm down, you're fine. Because they throw things in there that's like, it's totally fine, whatever. I mean, if you hit that one vein, you're probably gonna end up having to go to the hospital. But I've never had anybody do that. I'm like, well, I'm gonna be the first.
Or like you're gonna, if you hit a vein, they'll bleed a lot or a lot of bruising. I'm like, well, I don't want to do that. How do you not do that? Exactly. Did you go to school for this? Because I didn't go to school for this.
I did not. So anyway, sorry.
So okay, take us back to IVF. How was that process for you? So I'm kind of jumping the gun, but did that process end in twins? And tell us about that.
So we did IVF. They did all the shots and everything, and then just if you don't know the process, and I'm not going to go into all the details, but you do some shots, whatever. They try to basically grow as many eggs or
embryos,
whatever as they can, and then they do a small surgery to go in and harvest the eggs.
Oh, yeah.
The word harvest is just terrible.
It's weird. Yeah.
Stacy hated that. She's like, can you please stop talking about harvesting me?
Yeah.
Sounds like Alien. And
it's like the reaping of the eggs is weird. It's a weird concept.
Yeah. So they do that, and then I do in a room somewhere, and then they take those and mix them together, and you see how many embryos you get, and then there's like this 5-day process where after day 2 they tell you how many embryos have survived, and then after day 5, and then at that point they freeze them or implant them or whatever. So we ended up with 14 embryos, which was crazy. But then
that's good.
That's really good.
Yeah.
And then they did the genetic testing on them, which is kind of a newer thing that you can do. And then so that tells you which ones are viable. So in the past, if you ever watch that episode of Friends where Phoebe,
Yeah.
and they're like, they're putting 5 in, and she's like, what am I giving birth under in a basket under a staircase? What am I, a cat? And it's like, well, no, because they only have a 20% chance of taking. That was because they couldn't tell which ones are viable. Now they have this genetic testing.
Right.
You have to pay extra for, of course, everything costs a fortune.
Yeah.
And then, so that brought it down to 7. And we said, okay, we want to put 2 in. And our doctor tries to talk us out of that. But we're like, no, we want to put 2 in.
Yeah.
And neither of them took. When
Wow.
you do the
I
genetic
didn't know that.
testing, it's supposed to increase the odds from 20% taking to like 85 or 90% of that they should take.
Wow.
So
And you put 2 in.
we put 2 in, and he even was like, that's statistically possible, but very unlikely. So he's like, we'll try it again. If this happens again, we need to do some more research to see if there's something else wrong here.
Yeah.
And that was probably the first time for me where I'm like, oh my gosh, this might not work.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's a scary moment.
And I just hadn't even considered that at that point. So we put 2 more in, and fortunately they took. And a boy and a girl. And with the genetic testing, their gender.
Yeah, that's
their sex
It's
before.
interesting. Yeah.
Just so crazy.
There's no gender. The gender reveal is like before they're even before you're even pregnant.
Right. So we did a boy and a girl, and
take me to that moment. Right, you're on this journey of like, oh, this might not work. Maybe that's your thought process. It's like, we've paid all this money. This is this is the procedure that's gonna work. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Then they both stick.
Yeah.
What a emotional roller coaster.
Yeah. I mean, we definitely were prepared for the idea that both of them could take.
Yeah.
We had a friend who had done IVF. They put 2 in, and one of them split, and they ended up with triplets.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm like, okay, this could go either way.
Yeah.
We could end up with none. We could end up with 1. We could end up with 2, or who knows? I mean, we were not hoping for triplets.
Yeah.
So we had the 2, and I own a production company, and we are very community. We love telling stories and bringing people into everything. So we've, from the beginning, from our engagement and everything, we've made videos to sort of announce things and had fun with it. And
we're definitely going to link to all that.
Yeah, you can go to finallybarnes.com and see the things there.
Just check it out below this podcast. Yeah.
So we made an announcement video for the fact that we're having twins, and at the end, the whole thing leads up to 1, and then at the end, it's kind of like, oh, and by the way, there's 2. And that was like crazy. So, it was.
Is there like a I don't know if this is the right term, but like a honeymoon phase of like, oh my gosh, we're pregnant with twins.
I think it was,
and we're just like happy, and you're just, or were you automatically, like you said, thinking about the next step already?
I think. I remember being disappointed in myself in how I reacted. I was happy because mission accomplished, right? Like,
right, yeah.
But that's almost what it felt like. Like, okay, cool, check that off the list. Why am I not? This is something I've wanted my whole life.
Yeah.
Why am I not over the moon excited about this? I was, but I wasn't. If that makes sense.
Yeah,
it's
so
a weird, like. Cognitively I was, but like it took a while. And here's the other thing that I learned in the process, and this is for anybody. I think that 9-month gestational period is there in some ways for a reason, because it took me 9 months to really let it sink in. Like, oh, we're having kids, and all the clues that go along with that, watching Stacy, get bigger and cravings, and which all she craved was watermelon, which was the weirdest thing ever. Our kids, I swear, have watermelon in their blood. And all of that kind of stuff. And I bring that up because it'll play into the next time. But but all those cues along the way sort of prepare your mind, and that's for any pregnancy, right? Like whatever. But yeah, I think part of it was I was a little bit numb after all of the like things and not wanting to get my expectations up. And so when I remember the day and I don't know, maybe this is not a typical guy thing to do. It sounds like a girl thing to do maybe, but I had always dreamed of the day where I don't know, come home from work and my wife somehow surprises me and is like, we're having a baby.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Kind of like a movie. Yeah.
Yes. I had always had that in my mind. And she did that. I came home and the room that we had sort of designated as the nursery, she had put things up in and balloons and things.
Very cool. Yeah.
And I think because I had been disappointed a couple times before where I had days. I'm processing this with you right in the moment.
I like it.
I think
this
because
is what this is all about, Matt. I
had had days before where I thought that was going to be the day.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
And instead I came home and it was like, I got the call. It didn't work.
Yeah.
Or there was one where I just had the day wrong.
Oh.
Where I thought there was one where I had been away and I thought, I got my dates wrong, and I thought the day I was coming home was the day she was supposed to find out. So I all day was like, oh my gosh, I'm getting back from this trip, and I'm excited, and I'm going to walk through the door, and it's going to be, and then I'm waiting, and she doesn't even acknowledge it, and then there's nothing, and I was like, finally, I'm like, are you not going to say anything? Like, whatever.
She's check the calendar.
She was like, dude, that's next week, dummy. So I think that had happened enough to where I don't know. It was like, really, we're having, wow.
Yeah.
But it's not like my heart jumped. It's not like I had that thing.
Yeah. It takes me back to that ship analogy that I was saying is you're on this ship and you're trying to care for yourself and you're trying to be directional and you really learn that. The learning of that, I think psychologically really becomes part of your identity of this is what we're doing. We're on this mission. And then when you get to your destination, so to speak, with the analogy, it's hard to turn off that mindset of like, we're on this mission.
Yes.
So you're like, you get there and it's like, it's time to celebrate. And you're like, this is now who I am. Like you're asking me to change my identity overnight. And it just doesn't happen that quickly. Yeah.
Because it became about making the mission happen.
Yes. And I felt that same way when we, in some of our, our story's different and, probably a little bit of our story, but in some of our adoptions, I remember, the child comes to live in your home and man, you've just been on this maniac journey to get there. And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, parenting, changing diapers. What show should we watch? And you're
the
like,
real practical side kicks in.
You're like, whoa, this is not where I'm at.
Right.
I've had to transform myself to become a type of person that can go through such a difficult thing.
Sure.
I can't transform myself out of that. And I think that's natural how long it took you to really be like.
And in your case, you don't get that 9 months.
Yeah, that's what's crazy about adoption.
You don't have all those cues that prepare your brain for what's coming.
Yeah.
You cognitively, which and this will tie into our second pregnancy.
Yeah.
Because we struggled with that as well. So we had McCoy and Violet, our first two, in September of 2017. And went in. Stacy went full term as far as twins are concerned. I think it was 38 weeks.
That's great.
And so like they had scheduled the C-section and they're like, we'll schedule it for 38 weeks. That's as long as we're going to let you go.
Yeah.
You're not going to make it to that point because twins average is 35 or 36 weeks.
Yeah.
She made
room.
It. So not enough room, not enough room in the womb. So, we got up that morning. We're like, oh, okay, we're going to the hospital, and we head on over and, everything goes initially according to plan, and we've got babies, and it's overwhelming, and it's weird, and it's the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then they wheel her into like the recovery, the post, surgery room, and we've got the babies, and and she just is zonked. I mean,
Yeah,
she just
yeah.
seems really out of it. And I'm just assuming, oh, that's just, I mean, she just had major surgery. Should they
Right.
just rip children out of her, you know?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
and, but almost like, then it's to the point where I'm like, she's kind of incoherent.
Oh, like you start to feel like something's wrong.
Something might be wrong, but then I'm like, again, not a medical expert. I don't know how this is supposed to go.
Yeah.
And then the nurse comes in and she goes, we're just gonna, if you guys could just wait over here. And she draws the curtain. We're just gonna check on a few things. And they're like, we're a little concerned about the amount of bleeding that's still happening. So we just want to take her back in and take a look. And I'm going, okay. But they're playing it like they're, playing it cool.
Yeah.
And, but also I'm going, are they playing it cool to keep me calm? But they're
right.
And
when will hospitals realize that when they play it cool, we freak out? We still freak out.
Yes. I'd rather just tell me like, this is actually concerning. We don't know how concerning at this point, but enough to go back. Okay, great. Thank you for letting me know that. But it was just like, we're just gonna go in and take a look. It's, whatever.
Yeah.
At that point, it was like, I mean, we'd been there. I don't know. It was like 2 PM. We get in there at like 9. So I'm like weak because I haven't eaten and whatever. They're like, you know what? We're just gonna go take a look. You go down to the cafeteria. Yeah. Get some food. Come back up. We'll let you know what's going on. I get to the cafeteria and I hear them call a code on her room.
Oh no.
Jeez. And I'm with my dad and my sister, and I couldn't move. Like I didn't know what to do. So the long story short, I won't go through the whole thing, but basically,
what a relaxing cafeteria meal you must have had.
I literally, it was so funny. I had picked a sandwich out, or no, my dad had grabbed a sandwich for me and handed it to me, and I'm like, I don't know if this is what I want. I don't know what to do. Do I eat? Do I just put it back? So I walk over and I set the sandwich back in. I'm like, I don't want that, and I stand there just staring at the sandwiches for like, and they're like, just pick a sandwich, and I literally am like, okay, fine. I reach and grab the exact same sandwich. Like my brain couldn't function. So
there's a lot going on at that point. Right?
A lot going on. We get up there, find out, like they've tried a couple different things. They can't get the bleeding to stop. Her uterus did not contract the way it normally should. And I'm leaving out a bunch of steps because it's unnecessary. But but they're still not quite giving me all the answers. And the moment that I knew things were hairy was when the chaplain came to talk to me.
Oh gosh.
And you're like, wait, what now?
Yeah, that's a scary moment.
Yeah. And so they ended up having to do, and what a weird place to be. My new twins are upstairs in the nursery, and I want to be with them, but my wife's in surgery, but there's also nothing I can do about that, but I don't want to miss anything. Yeah. It was crazy. So
it's like life and death just hanging in the balance.
Literally.
And that's, even I would say, what I feel like infertility is a lot of. It's just life and death in the balance all the time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Craziness.
So long story short, they ended up doing an emergency hysterectomy. She wakes up that night and
she's out. She's incoherent this whole time.
Yeah. They had knocked her out.
She's waking up to find out this happened.
Yes. Wow. Missed the whole thing. But she's good. She's healthy. She's great. She just no longer has a uterus. Yeah. But we still have, 3 more embryos.
Right.
And that's obviously that's like, okay, let's not jump. Even in this one, even I knew. Let's wait to talk about that till later.
You didn't suggest the next step on the way home from the hospital on that one?
I did not. So because she woke up and I had to the doctor and I had to tell her what had happened. And she was relieved that the babies were okay. She was relieved that she was okay, but like the sudden realization for her, I think a lot of it was, that was the last time I was going to be pregnant and I didn't know it. Like I'm never going to get to experience that again. And I didn't realize that at the time. And, she's also heavily medicated at this point. So there's just a lot of emotions. We're all exhausted. It was a mess.
take us into that moment where you have 3 embryos left.
Mm-hmm.
You've had to have an emergency hysterectomy. You have twins.
Mm-hmm.
You're a helicopter pilot. you got a full plate, right? And a lot of difficult decisions to make.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where are you in that? Like, from your perspective, like, how are you in that moment? Are you like, let's try to figure out what's next? Let's just call it for what it is. I mean, how did you move on? Not move on. That's not the right word. How did you live in that?
Yeah, it was all of that, because also you're in it with these 2 new lives.
Yeah.
That you're just like, I want to appreciate, and I want to be there, and I want to be present, and I want to get to know them, and I don't know, like, it's crazy, their personalities. Like, I remember in the hospital going, okay, Violet is going to be ADD, and she is the hyper one, and McCoy is going to be just the lover and just the chill, like, and they are those people today. I mean, and I there's only so much you can get to know them in the first 6 months, but like I didn't want to miss anything. I definitely was. It's funny, before they were born, like the month before they were born, I hadn't been doing any counseling or anything since we got married, and I went back to my therapist the month before, because I just thought, I don't want to take anything into being a dad that I'm not, aware of or anything like that. Is there anything that I need to? And he goes, it's so funny. Almost every dad that comes to me is a business person is coming to me because they're either afraid or they're already prioritizing. They're afraid they're going to prioritize business over their families, or they don't know how. And you're coming to me, and I'm going to him, telling him, my fear is I'm never going to want to work again. Yeah. Like, I'm not going to want to go back to work.
This is all I ever want to do.
I just want to stay home and like be with my kids. And I just started a company this last year, and also we started Rogue Aviation, the flight school, the week after they were born. So literally, at one point, I left the hospital on day 3, because Stacy was there for 4 days, on day 3 to go and see an office space for our new company that we started the following Monday. So
crazy.
Just dumb. But so they're just, you're in so many places, but I think it was, I sort of let it lie. I wanted Stacy to physically recover, because she went through basically double surgery. I mean, with the C-section and then hysterectomy. Yeah. And then the emotional side of that. And we talked a lot about that, just letting her process, and me. I mean, her losing, it's her, and there's a whole thing with her in that. But now my wife can't carry our children too, and there's something in that for me as well. But I don't want to make it about me. And there's that weird place for a guy to be in that, where it's like it is her body. She's the one that lost and isn't going to have that experience. But also, we both had this vision of what was coming next, and that has been lost.
Right. We need almost a third category where it's, you think like, oh, this is really difficult for the women who are experiencing it. And it is in a way, in a way it's way worse, and it's all about them. And, and then, on the other side of the coin, it's like, well, don't forget about the guys too. And, or the partner that's watching that person go through that, whoever that person is. I think we just need a third option that includes all of it, you know, because it's just not enough to say that it's only one person or the person watching someone go through it. It has to include all of it, because that's the full picture. It's
like reality. A Venn diagram.
Right.
There's the stuff she's got. There's the stuff I've got. But then there's the stuff that we've got together as well.
Somebody get a marker. Let's draw this thing up. Come on.
So,
and the real picture is really that middle portion, right? I mean, and it's almost unhelpful to only talk about one side, because the overlap is the relationship, and you can't forget that for the most cases, these situations are happening in relationship.
And I want to, like there were times where it needed to be about her side of the circle and the things that she was dealing with that I could not understand or relate to. And then there were times where less times, but there were times where it needed to be about my side of the circle. But there definitely is that middle part where it's like and I'm very fortunate because we've known each other so long. We've worked together in several different instances. We're just a good team. And we know how to process together. We're complete opposites in how we process, which at first was a problem, but then became once we realized it. And now it's great because I can help her process her way and she can help me process my way. And we know how to be there for each other. And so that was good. I think processing the emotions of all of that without getting into, in my head, I started to a bit, but without getting into, okay, so what's next? At least for a while. And by a while, 3 weeks to a month.
So what did come next? So if you're on, sometimes these podcasts, they turn into like these roller coaster, and I'm like, where we got 2 more kids coming. Where do they come from?
How did Poppy and Wells get here?
So tell us about it. What's the story?
So probably, they were born September 21st, end of October, right before Halloween. Probably we started talking about. Obviously, if we're going to have more, and then they're in that is a whole other thing that people are dealing with like you've got doctors who tell you make your choice. This is at this point like they're just genetic material, and there's so many opinions on that, and that's a whole other ball of wax, and I don't want to even go there today. But just, literally just like, okay, no, we go, I think here's where we landed. We had 5 embryos after the 2 that didn't take. 2 of them we chose at random, a boy and a girl. And those became Violet and McCoy. For us, once they were born and we realized we've got 3 more in deep freeze over at the hospital. And we chose these 2 randomly. We could have chosen a different one, and then McCoy would have be over there. And then if we didn't follow through, we'd never get to know this kid. That somehow that just for us, and I don't want to speak for other people, but for us, that made some decisions.
That was the motivating factor for you.
It really, because all of a sudden you're like, they're just 2 cells right now. But those 2 cells became McCoy or became Violet. And if we had chosen other ones, we never would have. Who else are we not knowing? And for us, that made the decision. I know other people, it's different. And I have honestly, it's crazy and it's hard, and I can't even begin to. There's no judgment on that because it's a weird place. But
that's what brought you back to.
That brought us to
try it again.
And really the only option for us was surrogacy. So, which we, again, are entering into a process we know zero about.
Right. Again, not something talked about a lot when you're thinking about family.
No. And also, hey, we spent a fortune on IVF. Let's spend a fortune again. There's just, unfortunately, we had family that was like, we will help you with whatever we want. Like I said, my parents were desperate for grandkids. So
how desperate, Grandma, Grandpa?
What's it really worth to you? So and we tested the boundaries of that one, because and not everybody has that, and we were very fortunate.
That's the difficulty. Is not everybody does. It's a blessing for you in your situation. And that's why infertility is so difficult. There's a million variables. And each person is one of them, and you got to almost deal with that in and of itself.
So we looked into surrogacy. We found an agency that was right down the street that was well recommended by our fertility agency. Clinic. Thank you. Fertility clinic. And we pretty quickly got matched with a surrogate. She lived in Riverside. Or Redlands rather.
Just like an hour away from where
Yeah.
yeah.
So that was a challenge.
Yeah.
We because we wanted to be involved. Now,
Yeah.
this is, again, we're learning about this whole process as we go. Our fertility doctor had actually also done surrogacy himself, and
wow.
and when we asked
Wow.
him about it, he told us about his journey, and he literally, they did the transfer of the embryos,
Yeah.
and he did not even communicate or talk to the surrogate again
Wow.
until the kids were born.
Oh my gosh.
He just was like,
Yeah.
yeah, you're doing your thing and I'm doing mine. And
Yeah. I
it's
mean, that is an
very
option, right?
transactional,
Yeah.
you know. For us, that was not an option. We wanted to be involved.
Yeah.
And I think this is, you know, like I said earlier, when you're going through pregnancy, you have those cues along the way. When you're going through surrogacy, you have no cues,
Yeah.
especially when she lives an hour away.
Yeah. You're like, oh my gosh, we're 8 months pregnant.
Right.
Oh, we're 7 months, whatever it is, you know?
We literally at one point sat down and looked at the calendar and made every month some sort of landmark or benchmark for us to remind us, what would we be doing at 3 months? What would we be doing at 4 or 5 months? We would be, okay, at 6 months, we would be starting to get furniture for the bedroom, for the new nursery. At 8 months, so that we would have those reminders that this was coming. Otherwise, we're going to get a call one day and be like, oh crap, we're having kids.
And not one.
And
we're
not
having
one.
two again.
Two again. Yeah, we put 2 in again. And so another boy, girl, because we thought, well, you know, hopefully at least one of them will take. And they both did. And fortunately, our surrogate was great and was like, cool, let's do this.
Yeah.
And if you go to our website, you can see the video where we announced that, and she's in it. And she's great. We still keep in contact with her.
Yeah.
But that was just the most freaking bizarre. You know, you're sitting here in Newport Beach or Costa Mesa and going, yeah, so there's this random girl who 3 months ago we didn't even know, who an hour away from here, who's growing our babies for us.
Yeah. Like, I wonder what she's doing today.
Right. Like, I don't know. Like, it's such a weird thing.
Yeah. Very bizarre.
So that was.
Did you think about it every day?
Most days I would say I thought about it.
Like, were you really tied to it?
I was making a conscious effort to do that because I knew if I didn't, it would be a problem. I was so afraid. I think partially because, you know, and this is with waiting until you're almost 40 to have kids, your identity is so set in being a single person or being a non-parent.
Yeah. You have a lot of identity markers that you've created.
Yeah. All of our friends, those are the parents, the ones that have kids, the ones that we've watched their kids grow up, the ones that got married and had kids in their mid-20s and their kids are now in high school and we're just getting started. Those are their parents. So, I mean, it took a long time, even with the first 2, to feel like, hey, I'm a dad. I still have days where I'm like, I walk home and I'm walk in the door and they're like, Dad. And I'm like, oh, wait, that's me.
Right.
Crap. And there's 4 of them.
Yeah. The chorus of 4 voices. Dad. Yeah.
So that was hard. So I knew, and I'd experienced that with Violet McCoy. So I knew that I was a little bit afraid that, is this going to make it even harder for me to connect with them when I don't have that 9 months?
Right. Yeah. Okay, you have such a fascinating story. I want to ask you this final question, and I want to thank you for sharing with us. It's been amazing. I think we got to do it again. We got to dig down into another topic.
Sure.
The all-male cast of the Infertility Feelings podcast. My question for you is, gosh, I guess if I could just ask a real question, would be what would you say to other guys out there who are kind of at the beginning of where you were at, where your journey was? Maybe they're looking ahead going, oh man, I'd love to have 4 kids. You know, I'd love people to call me dad. What's something you would say to them? I'm going to make you use all your feeling emotions.
It's so, I would say, oh man, I don't know. I don't want to, it's about balance. I think it's about balancing hope with realism. It's about being open to being a family can look so many different ways. And I think what got beat out of me not about this, but benefited me in this in my 20s and early 30s was it's life can look a lot different from what you thought it was going to look like, but that doesn't have to be a bad thing. And you know, I like I said, my parents graduated college, got married, started working, had kids, did the thing.
Yeah.
You know, they were done having kids by the time they were 35.
Yeah.
I never in my life questioned that was going to be me. When I graduated college and didn't have somebody that I was ready to marry, I was so confused.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, what's wrong? I thought that
I
was
don't have that card in this deck. What's going on?
That was a given, right? Like,
yeah.
I'm supposed to get married next year. And I just broke up with my girlfriend, so I don't know how that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I spent a long time feeling bad about that, feeling like I had failed, feeling like life was not going the way that I, had planned it. And then suddenly I'm like, but wait a minute, who says that's the right way?
Yeah.
And so I think it was when I started opening myself up to life can look a lot of different ways, and they sometimes can be better than even what you imagined, if you let them.
Yeah.
I don't know. That to me changed my whole perspective. So
I think that's honestly beautiful. It really is. I think that's exactly what I needed to hear and needed to know, because it became my reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really was true that the life I'm living now is totally different than what I thought would be, but I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's way different. There's a ton of pain involved, a lot of scary parts, a few really traumatic parts.
Sure.
But I've accepted this life, and I've gone from acceptance to really, even liking it and feeling at peace.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, I look at you and Jesse and your story and your family, and I'm like, that's beautiful. Yeah. But I can see where it could take a while to get to that place if you're in it, because that was not the painting that you saw. That was not the picture that you had painted in your head. And freeing ourselves of that, I don't know. I've learned a lot about expectations, even in so many areas of life. People ask you just dumb questions like, what's your 5-year plan? What's your 10-year plan? I don't know. Yeah. If at any time I had told you where I'm going to be in 5 years and what I'm going to be doing in 5 years, I would have been wrong. That's never been that. A helicopter pilot was not a thing. Like, none of that. And yet once I let go and was like, let's see where things take me, I'm able to enjoy it. I'm able to process it as I go. It doesn't mean there's not hard things. It doesn't mean it's not difficult sometimes, but I love my life. Yeah. And it's not what I thought it would look like, but I'm able to love it because I don't know. At some reason, at some time, I was able to let go of my expectations that were just honestly unfounded and just random. I mean, or set by culture or set by family or whatever, but they're not better than where I ended up. So absolutely, I guess that would be my long-winded advice. The only kind I know how to give.
Matt Barnes, thank you so much. It's been an honor to talk to you. I think your story is wonderful, and we got to hear more from you. So
absolutely,
check him out. We'll link to you all below. There's a lot of great videos to watch, a lot of funny stories and great things. And if you're in Southern California, come and fly with Matt Barnes.
Yeah, Rogue Aviation, flyrogue.com. Hey.
Have a great day, Matt.
All right, thanks for having me. Bye.